Thank you, David Adams. Well, good morning once again. This is the holiday season, and Thanksgiving is coming up. I want to say that I'm thankful for all of you. You compose my spiritual family. If you're here today, whether it's the first time or you come on a regular basis, if you're in this chair, you're part of my spiritual family. Hopefully, I'm part of yours. If you're sitting in this room today, you have equal ownership in this beautiful temple. It doesn't belong to anybody but the people that come here. And you also have an equal say in what takes place here. 3 or 4 times a year, we put out a survey, and we ask for feedback from you. We ask what you like, what you don't like, and what you'd like to see change. Oftentimes, some of the suggestions that come back are a bit difficult, and they take more time than we think to get them enacted or to get the change made. As an example, it was several months ago, several people came forward and complained that it was too hot in here. And it took us a while, but we don't have that problem today. Right? You know, when we think about Thanksgiving and blessings and gratitude, usually it's in the material form. You know, we think of people, and we think of places, and we think of items that we have, and possessions that we own, and pets, and all sorts of beautiful things in this world around us. And when it comes to people, today I'd like to talk about 2 people in particular that are very, very special to me. And the first one is my good friend Phoebe Brown. Phoebe and I have been together for 25 years in the same spiritual family. And I point her out today because Thanksgiving is her birthday, and she's going to be 97 years old. Phoebe, can you stand up so we can applaud you? Come on. If I don't say you happy birthday, it's always a pleasure. The other person I'd like to point out is Susan Ellis. And I'll tell you why. Susan and I used to live in the same condominium building. And one day I was leaving, and another member of this congregation was standing at the front door. She had a hot dish in her hand. And I opened the door, and I said, "What on earth are you doing here?" And I thought she said, "Susan died." And I knew she was a friend of Susan Ellis. She actually said, "Susan Ants died." But I didn't hear the ant. I said, "Susan died? My God, what happened? That's horrible." She said, "I don't know all the details, but I'm bringing this up." So she went up. For 3 days, I mourned Susan Ellis. You know, gosh, she was so young, she was so vibrant. I'd see her at the gym walking, and Susan's gone. She was the first dentist I ever had when I came here to Kansas City. Then one day I was walking out the back door, and here comes Susan. I don't know what she thought, but you know, I grabbed her and I started crying. I think, "My God, you're alive, you're alive." Susan, would you stand up? I tell you, life is just so much fun. You know, we often talk, as I said before, we talk about blessings and gratitudes in regard to the physical manifestation of things. But there's also the invisible things that we have, the invisible blessings and gifts that are ours. The entire history of existence has been the invisible becoming visible. Now think about that for a moment. At one point, these chairs were invisible. They didn't exist. They were an idea in the mind of the Creator who wanted to make a little more comfortable chair. And so from that invisible design came forth the chair, and all the materials were there to provide for it. Going back even further, and I happen to be an evolutionist, 14 billion years ago, there was nothing. And when I say nothing, I mean there were no things. It was just empty space. And then, in a split second, everything came into being. Things came into existence for the first time. They were called quarks, little tiny subatomic particles. Things that had within them the potential and the properties to go forth and create all of this. Those things began to congregate in a very specific way. There were 6 different types, and they had 2 different variations. One was up and one was down. So these quarks had to come together in forms of 3. And there had to be 2 ups and 1 down, or 2 downs and 1 up. If that didn't take place, they lost existence for eternity. So the quarks did that. 300,000 years later, the quarks began to congregate. They made atoms. Then we have 10 billion years where the atoms congregate and they have these huge stars, 1,000 times bigger than our Earth, these huge stars that were formed. And inside, they were basically volcanic. They had all this fire and this ash, but they were rich in minerals. And the stars grew so big that they exploded and they spewed their innards out all over the universe. And one of those tiny little specks that came out was the Earth, 4 billion years ago. Now, the Earth had to be in exactly the right place at exactly the right time in order to catch its rotation around the sun. If that wouldn't have taken place, nothing would be here today. As Earth went along, 3.5 billion years later, life was formed. And life was formed by all these chemicals that were all over every place. 4 of those chemicals came together and they had to be in exactly the right size, exactly the right amount, at exactly the right time, and exactly the right conditions for life to come to exist. 4 chemicals. Now, those chemicals couldn't survive on their own because the waters and the winds and everything were swishing them around. So they had to build a little home for themselves, and that home is called a membrane. These 4 chemicals came together, they formed a membrane around themselves so they could survive, and that is how life started. That is the first living cell. It's amazing when you stop and think about it. All the things that had to happen for us to be here today. Now, it's amazing, but at the same time, at the beginning, there were invisible laws, there were spiritual principles that were in place that would provide for every living thing exactly what it needed in order to survive and live a comfortable life. A bird had within its consciousness the ability to fly. A fish had within its consciousness the ability to swim. Every single animal had within its consciousness the ability to do what it needed to do in order to survive. And when it comes to human beings, we were given those same properties. Now, the thing about it is, at the beginning, there was potential, invisibility, but there was potential. And that potential began to unfold. All of life came forth because all of life was given the potential, once again, to live a comfortable life. So we came forth and we were giving attributes, spiritual attributes that were above and beyond any other living form. Humans were given things like imagination and compassion and creativity and all sorts of different things, faith and hope and love that we had in order to be able to survive this planet and evolve to an unconditional loving being. That is our destiny. That is our goal. That is the legacy we must leave to the other generations, that we have these gifts and we can create more of what is. Now, when Jesus said, "What I have done, you can do also," he wasn't talking about walking on water. He wasn't talking about bringing the life back to death or the dead back to life. He wasn't talking about those things. He was talking about his potential for all these spiritual attributes like love and hope and faith and healing and forgiveness and compassion. He said, "I have these things and you have them too in equal amount." Now, your talent might not be what mine is, which is charismatic and be able to heal and do other things, but your talents come forth from the same Spirit, and you have the same attributes to help you unfold your potential. In the book of Corinthians, it says everybody has unique gifts and talents. They might all be different, but they all come from the same source. And when it comes to our spiritual attributes, there is no deficit, there is no variation, there is no difference between us. We all have these things within us that allow us to overcome obstacles and move forward. Now, in the front of your bulletin, I've listed some people here. Everyday, not ordinary, but they're everyday people, just like you and me. They have the same life force within them, they have the same spiritual attributes, they come forth from the same God. And the first one is Cha Sa-soon. She lives in South Korea. And I give her as an example of determination. She was an elderly lady, I believe in her 70s or something, and all of a sudden she decided she wanted to learn how to drive because her children lived a long distance away. So in the morning she got up, she had to take a bus for 2 hours to get to the driver place, the driver license place, and take the test. It cost her $5. Well, she was a smart woman and she could drive a car, but she didn't understand the terminology on the test because it came from a different form of Korean than she was raised with. So she took the test and failed. She got up the next morning, went to the driver's license bureau, took the test and failed. And she did that again and again and again. 5 times a week she did that for over 10 years. She failed her driver's license test, and this was in the New York Times. She failed her driver's license test over 900 times. Each time taking the bus for 2 hours, paying $5. Now think about that for a second. That's determination. No more than the determination you have within you, but that is determination. When she got it, all of South Korea rose up in celebration. She became like a national hero. Hyundai, the car maker, featured her in their commercials and paid her and gave her a brand new car. Her picture is in the New York Times standing next to a brand new Hyundai. Determination. The next one is compassion. And this story really touches me. It was during the Special Olympics, and there was a race with Down syndrome children. They got up, they got ready to go, the gun went off, they all started running, and one little boy tripped and fell, and he hurt himself, and as he did, he yelled out. The other kids had gone a long distance ahead of him at that point, but when they heard the yell, they stopped. They turned around. All 9 of the kids in the race came back to the boy who had fallen. A little girl got down, put her arm around him, and kissed his knee and said, "This will make it better." They helped the boy up. All 10 of them walked the race together and finished. It was a 10-person tie. That's compassion. The next one is perseverance. Marla Runyon, when she was 9 years old, she came down with some sort of an illness and became blinded. But even at 9, she was an outstanding runner. She excelled in the 5,000-meter race. But after she was blinded, she continued to race, and she won a spot at the Olympics and actually raced in the Olympics. Blind, with no guide dog, no people on either side. She was somehow able to use the very little peripheral vision she had to guide her, and she would use the people around her to keep her in line, and then when she knew she was coming up to the end, she'd break out. The next one is patience. Annie Clark. How many people in here remember those days when we learned how to write? Remember, day after day after day, this is for me, I don't know if they did it when all you people were in school, but you had to make circles over and over and over again, and then lines going up and down and up and down and up and down. And then we had to learn cursive and how to make letters over and over and over. It took such patience to continue on. Well, Annie Clark, at age 7, won the National Penmanship Championship for her age group at age 7. Somebody had to win. But the thing about it is, Annie was born without hands. She held the pencil between her 2 wrists. She had no prosthetic hands or anything like that. And she practiced and she practiced and she practiced and she corrected and corrected, won first place in a national writing contest with no hands. I think that's incredible. And then we have willpower. Christy Brown, famous artist, famous author, lived, I believe, maybe 100 years ago or so. And when Christy was born, he had a very rare form of multiple sclerosis, or muscular dystrophy, excuse me. And people thought that he is not only physically defective, but he is also mentally defective because he couldn't talk. He couldn't control any part of his body movement. And so the family just kind of laid him on the floor, and they took turns feeding him, and took turns dressing him and bathing him. But nobody really paid any attention to him. They loved him, but they knew that was as far as he was going to go. And then one day, when he was about 10 or 12 years old, the other children in the family, and I believe there were 7, and they were sitting around doing their homework with a piece of chalk. They're writing on a blackboard. The chalk dropped, fell on the floor. Christy Brown picked it up with his left foot. The mother hurried over to take the chalk away from him because she didn't think he knew what to do with it. But he quickly drew a line, and then he drew another line, and pretty soon it was an M, and then an O, and a T, and an H, and an E, and an R. And he couldn't talk, he couldn't say anything. All he could move was his left foot. Later on, Daniel Day-Lewis made a movie about it called My Left Foot. Fabulous movie if you want to see it. But anyway, they continued to realize now that he has potential, that he's got a brain, that he's smart, and that he can do things. And they started to encourage his potentiality. They built a house right next to theirs that he could have as a studio. He began to paint with his left foot only. That's the only part of his body he had control over. His art was picked up by art museums and outlets, and he began to sell, and he began to make a lot of money. And then he began to write books, printing with his left foot only. And he wrote like 27 books that became national bestsellers with a left foot. The only way he could move was by laying down on the floor and pushing himself with his one foot to get where he wanted to go. At one point in time, his mother had a heart attack. He was upstairs. He heard the thud. She didn't come back for several minutes. He pushed himself down the stairs, and there was his mother. He pushed himself over to her, and he could see that she was hurt. He turned around with his left foot. He began to slam the door as hard as he could. A neighbor heard it. Came, took the mother to the hospital, and saved her life. Christy Brown, My Left Foot. Now, I bring these people up because they are extraordinary in what they've done. But in regards to what they're made of, no more extraordinary than you and I are. We have that same kind of compassion where we can reach out to people and we can help heal their wounds. We can lift their burdens simply by being kind. If we're after a particular goal, we have a dream or desire, we have the determination to move forward. After failure, after failure, after failure, keep moving forward, learning a little bit each time and going a little bit further. We have patience with other people. We have perseverance, stick-to-itiveness, determination. We have all these attributes within us, and all of them can be used, can be utilized by us to create not only more joy for ourselves, but more joy for the people around us, and bring a beneficial presence to our community and our world. So the point of this is, don't ever underestimate yourself. Don't ever depreciate yourself. Don't ever criticize yourself. Don't ever think, why me? Why does everybody else have all these things in me? Because you have that power, that divine power that has been moving forward in evolution for 14 billion years to bring you right here where you are today to do something. Whatever it is you want, you can do something. Think about that as we move into meditation. Take a moment to relax, make yourself comfortable. We'll now move into meditation. As we move into meditation, know that this time is your time. It's a time for you to be free from any worries, fears, anxieties, or burdens. It's a time for you to rest in that special place within. It's time for your mind to slow down, reflect on the good in your life, and say thank you. We go into meditation today with this American Indian prayer that's from Chief Yellow Lark. And it reads, "O Great Spirit, whose voice I hear in the wind, whose breath gives life to all, hear me. I come before you, one of your many children. I am small and weak. I need your strength and wisdom. Let me walk in beauty and make my eyes ever behold the red and purple sunset. Make my hands respect the things you have made, my ears sharp to hear your voice. Make me wise so that I may know the things you have taught my people, the lesson you have hidden in every leaf and rock. I seek strength not to be superior, but to be able to fight my greatest enemy, myself. Make me ever ready to come to you with clean hands and straight eyes, so that when life fades as a fading sunset, my spirit may come to you without blame. Now begin to bring yourself back. And as we do, we recognize the fact that each of us is an expression of divine spirit. As an expression of divine spirit, it is our inherited right to have peace of mind, a happy heart, a harmonious existence, love to give and love to receive. That is your right. And you have everything you need to make it happen. And so it is.
O great Spirit, earth, sun, sky, and sea, you are inside and all around me. You are inside and all around me.
It's now time for us to show our gratitude.